How do you write a melody? How do you just create a new, never-before-heard string of notes that sounds good? This video aims to give you a few strategies for becoming the composer you always wanted to be. In the process, we'll compose a melody from scratch so you can watch it happen. I've released a few music theory-related videos, and if you haven't watched them and you're not already familiar with scales, modes, and chords, you should go watch them first. And as usual, make sure to check this video description for any corrections or clarifications. Lots of musicians walk around with the idea that they can't write melodies of their own. If you're one of those people, it's time to shed that mentality once and for all. You need to accept that you may not be thrilled with what you come up with at first. It's easy to get caught in a self-critical loop when you're composing. What about this? No, that's dumb. What about this? Dumb. Or this? Dumb. You can't murder your melodic baby in its crib before it has a chance to grow and change. Learn to relax and enjoy the process. Many new composers struggle with one question: how do I start? Everyone works differently, but I'm going to recommend that you pick a scale and a key to work in and start by getting very comfortable with it. For the melody we're going to compose, let's play with the 6th mode of the C major scale, also known as the A natural minor scale. Go up the notes. Go down the notes. Play little patterns. Play arpeggios. Make big jumps. Think of the notes as a rabbit running through the woods, darting around, and try to play in the most unpredictable pattern you can. If you stumble upon a lick that you like, repeat it 100 times. Modify it. Play it slower. Play it faster. You get the idea. What we're doing here is loosening up. If you never compose music and never improvise, it can feel as if you don't have permission to play a note until it's handed to you by an authority. Well, you're the authority now, and the more fluid and natural you get with a scale, the more your muscle memory can take over, and the more your artistic inspiration can shine through. You stop needing to choose a note, and you start letting notes be chosen by your muscles under the influence of your inspiration. They sometimes call this playing around in a scale noodling. The world of musicians can loosely be broken into two camps: those that noodle and those that do not. Whether you become a full-fledged noodler or not, it's a great way to begin writing a melody. Composition is nothing more than slow-motion improvisation. Once you are truly comfortable with a scale, start thinking about what you're inspired to make. Do you have a specific flavor of melody in mind? What kind of music has been exciting you lately? Think of your new melody like a dream you're trying to remember. What's the rough outline? Is it darting, frenetic, and unpredictable? Is it soothing and tender? Does it sound mysterious and haunting? We'll keep these ideas in mind as we proceed. As you learn more about melody, you start to recognize little patterns that recur in music. For example, many melodies begin on a note from the triad based on the tonic. That is, they start on a note from the 1 chord, or in this case, the 1 minor chord, which in this key is A minor. Those notes are the 1, flat 3, and 5. Little runs of notes within the melody may also favor these triad notes. Later on in the melody, runs might start or end on other notes, and this can have the effect of implying a chord change. We'll talk more about chords later, but to get us started, let's just assume the chord is staying on the 1 minor for now. So let's start the first little phrase of our new melody on the 5 note, move down to the 1, and then end on the flat 3. How did I decide to play these notes? I didn't. I just remembered the guideline about being aware of the tonic triad notes, and I noodled, and I chose one of the patterns that seemed nice. I could have done this. Or this. Which is best? Who knows? Does it matter? What meaning does a melody hold anyway? It's up to you as an artist to either answer or ignore those questions, but So far so good, we have the start of a melody. Another way to kickstart your melody writing is to think of it rhythmically. You can temporarily consider the pitches to be unimportant and focus on the groove happening under the melody. Just play a single note and experiment with different rhythmic ideas. Maybe this. Or this. Or this. Let's take this pattern and use it for our next section of melody. I'll keep that rhythm, but noodle through a few notes of the scale. That's kind of nice, but for the aesthetic I'm going for, it feels a little over-dramatic to be happening this early in the overall melody. After all, we've only just begun. How about something a little more straightforward, using the same rhythmic idea? Now it's a little too simple, so let's keep that, but end on a more interesting note at the end. That'll work. You can also begin your writing with some kind of concept. Maybe your melody always starts on the 5 note and goes to a different place each time it completes a short rhythmic loop. Maybe your melody involves a lot of oscillating back and forth between the 5 and a moving note. Maybe your melody repeats the rough shape of a movement in several places in the scale, with little variations. Maybe your melody is always using a sort of waterfall pattern. Maybe your melody hammers one note with little darting variations out to the side in a fast rhythmic pattern. These are all ideas in a simple sense. They establish a sort of game with the listener to draw them in. They tell the world, this is how this melody works. Listen as I play with this idea. You can stick with one of these ideas for the entire melody, or just throw it out there and move on. Another source of inspiration could be a chord progression that accompanies your melody. I have a 2-part series on choosing chords for a melody, and you should check it out, but it does assume that a melody exists already. If there is no melody yet, you can just pick chords that sound nice, or sound like something you might like to noodle over. If you're lost in space with no idea how to choose, just choose some at random. You'll start to pick up on patterns as you gain experience. A great way to gain that experience is to study the music of others. Let's examine a piece of music using nkoda, the sponsor of this video. nkoda is a subscription sheet music service. You just download the app, sign up for an account, and you have access to millions of pages of sheet music, available for an incredible variety of instruments and genres. There are lots of other features too, like the ability to do sophisticated annotations, or to curate and share libraries of music. Once you have composed a melody, you can even upload your own scores to share with others. Let's look at Bach's so-called Little Fugue in G minor. From the sheet music nkoda provides, we can trace the very beginning of the melody. The first 3 notes trace the root position triad, which is G minor in this case. So this is just like the melody we are composing, in that it begins with notes from the 1 minor chord. The next section uses another trick we saw earlier. It bounces between a steady note while a second note moves around in the scale. It then repeats this phrase a second time. So in just the first couple of measures, we're seeing these methods put into practice by a master. You can use nkoda's annotation features to mark these ideas for later reference. To sign up, just visit your app store or visit nkoda.com for more information. Our melody started on a 1 minor chord. Let's add a few more chords, basically at random, with a resolution back to the 1 minor at the end. Going forward, this will serve as the harmonic bed underneath our melody. Once you have the progression, figure out the logistics of hearing it as you compose. If you play flute, you might need to ask another musician to play a backing track, or you could use a computer program to generate a synthetic backing track. If you're able, you can make your own recording of background chords. Just something simple to give your ear an idea of what's happening harmonically. If you're composing on a piano or guitar, you may not need to record anything. You can work on a section of the melody and occasionally play the chord underneath to hear how it sounds. Or you can just compose the melody and ignore the chord progression altogether for the time being. Let's play the melody we have already composed and then see if we can find something interesting for this next chord. This chord is kind of a significant sounding movement to my ears, so I'm going to echo that in the melody with a bold jump. I'm also going to make that melodic jump a little ahead of the chord change. I want to surprise the listener and leave them in tension for a second before the chord comes along to justify the melodic choice. Okay, so what comes next? I like the way that early anticipation of the chord feels, so let's use that as our concept for the next few sections of melody. The game here is to hit a strange-sounding note from the upcoming chord just before that chord happens. We'll use the same rhythmic pattern from the preceding section. I could just present to you the result of this composition process, but instead I will now play some of the actual noodling that I did to find these ideas. You'll hear that I play the background chord progression on a loop, and I just start trying little ideas, one after another, until I gradually hone in on the ones I like. As you'll hear, sometimes I am playing in time with the chord changes, but other times I'm just noodling on my own, trying to find an alternative option. I will continue this compositional pattern for the next couple of chords as well. Now our melody sounds something like this. Repetition is a major tool melody writers use. Our brain enjoys hearing something it recognizes. For example, notice that almost every pop song in history has a chorus. Our brains also enjoy being surprised, and by setting up a repetition, you can establish an expectation. You can then satisfy that expectation or deny it as you see fit. Let's put all this into play by repeating the entire melody a second time, and at the end of the second time through, we'll change the last chord. And over that changed chord, we're going to keep the same melody note. Because I watched my other videos, I know that I can choose another chord that works with this melody note. In this case, the melody note won't be in the chord, but it will be a nice color note against the chord. This is a good time to talk about form. Some melodies are 45 minutes long. Some last only a measure or two and repeat hypnotically. I often write tunes in a classic A-A-B-B folk form, meaning there is an A part and a B part, and you play each twice. Knowing what overall shape your melody should be can help you with choices. For this tune, let's think of this new chord variation as being the second ending of an A part, which will conclude with a little run back down to the 1. Actually, no, that's too obvious. Noodling to the rescue. How about this? As we start on the next part of the melody, let's play with violations of the scale. We're going to try to move to a non-scale note on purpose. If it sounds weird, we'll try to find some harmonic context to justify it. If it still sounds weird, we'll try a different note entirely. How about a run like this? This last note is in the scale. Let's bump that note up to here. It sounds pretty wrong at first, but if we change the underlying chord to a 4 major to match that deviation, it starts to work better. And if we move to the flat 7 chord afterwards, it works even better. For the next section, we can try rewriting a familiar melody. This is a good trick in general. Maybe you add a new section to an existing melody. Or take a section of a melody, keep the exact timing of the notes, and change only the pitches of the notes. Let's start with the beginning of Beethoven's Für Elise. Of course, if we just drop it into the melody, it will sound like an intentional quotation. But let's noodle around with the basic shape of it for a minute. Let's change the rhythm a little more. And let's add a chord underneath that matches that final note. So far, the B part of our melody has only 3 measures in it. That feels a little short to me, so I'll add one more. A couple other quick tips. Occasionally recording your melody, taking some time away from it, and only then listening to it can be very enlightening. It's easy to lose perspective. Getting some distance helps restore the element of surprise. Making music in a community can be helpful. You can practice making melodies with other musicians. It can be a great motivator and a source of inspiration. If you don't know anyone, there are computer programs that can aid in generating melodic or harmonic ideas. Once you have completed a rough draft of a melody, there are a few things that are worth considering. Dynamic variation is an aspect of melody that beginners often overlook, meaning the overall intensity and volume of the melody and how that changes through the piece. Imagine stepping back 50 feet from your melody and looking at the overall shape of it. If the shape is sort of a flat, unchanging line, you might want to make some changes. Our melody is a little flat. Let's fix that by making a couple parts a little quieter, making some notes pop out, make some of them a little punchier, and so on. It's as if we have turned up the contrast knob on an image. Some genres emphasize a lack of dynamic contrast, preferring instead to hypnotize the listener, but I think it suits this melody. There are other ways to add variation. In this section of our melody, we can replace a few of these repeated phrases with more sustained notes when we're playing through the second time, and it might help vary the pacing a little. If you have done all this work and you have a finished melody, but you still aren't satisfied with it, remember the festival effect. You hear a masterful musician play a melody, maybe at a music festival somewhere, and you ask them the name of the tune. Excited, you rush home and look it up on the internet and find a bunch of rough recordings, or a MIDI file, or sheet music, and suddenly the melody seems like the dumbest thing you've heard in your life. This phenomena speaks to the power a musician has to infuse a melody with spirit and flavor. In terms of your own composing, remember that your melody is only like 20% of the music it enables. In the hands of the right musician, perhaps you, after you've had a chance to practice it more, it might be fantastic. Try giving it to a willing friend to see if they can figure out what's great about it. If you really aren't satisfied, just take a breath and get back to work. Recognize when it's time to be brutal and just cut out the parts you don't like. On the other hand, it's healthy to just set it down and call it done. If there is something unsatisfying about it, just tell yourself that you'll get it right on the next one. Writing a melody doesn't have to feel like polishing a diamond. Here is our finished melody, recorded with real instruments and some other embellishments, just to demonstrate the potential. I hope this video was useful to you. If you'd like to make a donation to help make these videos possible, I would really appreciate it. There's a link down in the description for donations. I also have a Patreon, so if you subscribe, then I can get a donation from you every time I put out a video. It really means a lot. Thanks. Hey, guess what? I'm in the process of making a full course on beginning music theory. It's going to cover the content of the Music Theory Distilled series already posted here, but at a much slower, saner pace, with lots of examples and more thorough explanations. What is covered in 25 minutes in the original series will be expanded to about 2 hours of content and bonus materials. It won't be free, but it'll be very reasonably priced. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to hear about it when it's done. It's going to take a while. I want to make it great, and I'm just a one-man show over here, so thanks in advance for your patience. Also, remember to subscribe to the second channel if you want to catch music-related videos. I'm heading into the studio with one of my bands and we'll be recording an album of original compositions. So if you want to hear one person's interpretation of the tips in these videos, you can check that out. And hey, if you create any melodies with the help of this video, why not share in the comments? I'd love to hear what you came up with.